Hello, this is Nick Sotos with Additives. I'm here with Pete Kambouris from Wisconsin Engraving and Bryan Whitaker, our own technical manager with Additives. We're here to kind of talk a little bit about Wisconsin Engraving, mold texturing, their history, and we've been friends with Pete for a while. Met Pete through the SPE, was the first time I met him, was up at their great golf outing that they would have up in Milwaukee. And so I understand, Pete, your company is 98 years old. You're 2 years away from 100.
That's right, Nick. So our company, if you don't mind, I'll dive into a little history here of
Please do.
who we are and how we originated. So our company has always been in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Milwaukee, Wisconsin was a hotbed for manufacturing from the turn of the century till today. I mean, we're still pretty strong here. So Wisconsin Engraving, which was known as Badger Engraving, was founded in 1923 by 5 German immigrants. So these German immigrants came to this country. They saw a need for engraving services. I mean, everything was made out of metal. Packaging was all hot stamped. You know, all the fruit crates were wood, and everybody would have their, you know, Kambouris and Sons fruit and vegetables. So a lot of leather work, whatever. So long story short, they were making a lot of dyes for the trade back then. Fast forward to the war, actually, World War II. We were actually the largest engraver in the country at some point. There was over 85 people. We were the only engraver that was hired by the U.S. government. You know, we did our part during the war. We were engraving the graduations for the turrets on the tanks. So as the U.S. tanks were firing at the Axis powers, they could see what degrees they had to fire at. And Wisconsin Engraving, or Badger still at that time, was responsible for doing all that. So I did some digging on the company, and I found all these little bits and pieces of history. Then in the 50s, the 5 guys, they got into a disagreement, blah, blah, blah. One guy took it over. And then it kind of transitioned into Wisconsin Engraving. So the way I got involved in this, I'm second generation in the company. My father was first generation. He came from Greece in 68, 69. And at that time, you know very well that when an immigrant came into the country, they had to be sponsored. So my aunt, my mother's sister, was nice enough to say, okay, well, I gotta find this useless brother-in-law of mine a job, you know, so he can support himself. Well, my dad was an engraver in Greece, so he was working at a company. They did a lot of government stamps, a lot of stamps for notaries, things like that. So he was an artist. He was a hand engraver. And on the pantograph and whatnot. So she found Wisconsin Engraving in the phone book. She said, hey, take my brother-in-law. He needs a job. And the rest is history. You know, my dad was in this company now for over 50 years. You know, and his goal was always to make something of himself. You know, he grew up hearing the stories in Greece. You know, the kids would leave the neighborhood and come to America, and they made good. You know, they always heard the guys returning and saying, hey, I own a chain of supermarkets. The guy owned a vegetable cart on the corner, but he was so proud to go back and say, so my dad's like, okay, looked at my mom, let's go to America. So my dad's been in the company since 1968. I got involved myself, I don't know, before high school. I needed a job. They needed a grunt to clean machines. I would come in, clean up machines with my dad every Saturday morning. He'd wake me up at 5 o'clock. Let's go to work. And then it progressed from there. They found out I was pretty much useless on the production floor. So they said, well, you talk a lot, so let's get you in the office. So it was interesting because I went to school. I graduated from UWM with a print journalism degree, which is a far cry from mold texturing and engraving. But having that degree kind of got me in, and it helped me with the sales, and it helped me organize things here internally. Which benefited us. I mean, you see I'm on LinkedIn all the time. I'm trying to advertise as much as I can for the company.
You're good at telling stories.
You know, that's one thing. And our story is pretty
that's a big
great.
part of sales. I mean, I tell stories all the time to get my point across. I mean, it's
You
fun.
have to. You know, we like to build a rapport with the customer. And you know, I'm extremely proud of what my dad did. You know, my dad came here with nothing. I always tell the story that, you know, a year after he got here, his father died. My grandpa died. He had no money to go home. He couldn't go back to his father's funeral. But then all of a sudden, you know, he's the present owner of Wisconsin Engraving. We're one of the largest at what we do, privately held companies. So it's a big honor, you know, it's a fun story to tell. And today, you know, we don't always have these cool stories to tell about our companies, and we're a trade, you know, tool making and what we do as a service provider. Everyone's extremely proud of what they did. You know, you see these big tool shops, they started in these little barns off their property. And then they turn into these big, you know, tool shops, and they build these world-class products. And, you know, I can't walk into Target or Walmart or anywhere else without saying, hey, you see that? We worked on it. My wife's just like, shut up. You know, we don't care. And I was like, well, you should. I said, honey, it pays the mortgage. And, you know, from the financial side, it's cool. You know, we talk here in the company, we say, you know, there's 30 people at Wisconsin Engraving. So 30 cheeseheads. No, I take it back. There's one guy from Illinois. And we get to touch all these projects that are global, you know, and to be able to be part of that, to say, hey, you know, there's a new product on the shelf that this company made a big hoopla about introducing. We did something as simple as just texture a little area on it, or we did the engraving on it, or whatnot.
Sure.
So there's a large pride. You know, we're very proud of what we do, and even more so for me because it's in the family. And you know, I know my dad always wanted us to go become doctors and stay out of the company, and as he called it, go into an easier business. It's neat. You know, it's neat. And you mentioned that, you know, we met with the SPE. You know, I got involved with SPE to learn what my customer base does. We don't do any molding in-house. We don't do any thermoforming. We don't do blow molding. We don't do this stuff. So if I'm going to go out and sell to my customer, I got to learn what they do. You know, and we cater to not only the mold making and plastics industry, but also the tool and die industry. So I'm in metal stamping houses all the time, and we're trying to figure out what they're doing. And it's not easy. It's not easy. So that's kind of the brief rundown of Wisconsin Engraving. You know, we've been, like we said, 1923 is when we started. So,
well, now you're a company that's 98 years old, but you're always staying on the cutting edge, right? I mean, what are some of the new things that are going on in your field that you can tell us about?
So, texture and engraving has been around forever. You know, texturing has been, we had to beg, borrow, and steal the trade in general from the printing industry. So how you make printing plates and things like that. It's kind of how texturing works. On the engraving side of things, if you look at our old brochures from the early 20s, you see some pantographs and some mills and a couple lathes. I mean, there's been a natural progression from that. There's always been that kind of metalworking machinery around. Texturing was something that you had to adopt from a different industry. It was all done by hand. It was all done by hand probably up until 15, 20 years ago. So for that long, it was done traditional, laying in a pattern and doing some acid etching. Then came new chemicals, and then we could print we could print on these high-speed printers. Nice.
Well, wait. When you say by hand, and you're saying like you acid etching, what do you drop some acid on it, and then you
No,
cut
let
it
me
in there, or
rephrase.
what do you? I mean, what do you do to like hand doing it? I just don't.
All right. Let me clarify
crazy.
that. So we would make a plate, like you make a printing plate, like you're making a newspaper or something, and you would ink it up, and then the paper runs over it, and it picks up the ink. So what we call the transfer method is we make a plate. Let's say you want a leather grain. So we have a plate engraved. We ink that plate, put paper on it, pull the paper, now you have the leather grain on this paper. Take the paper to the mold, transfer it to the mold, lay it in there, pour a solution in there, remove the paper, the ink stays behind. Does that make sense to you?
Okay. Okay.
So then the ink stays behind, and then you have ink, steel, whatever, however the pattern is. And then when you pour the acid in there, it only eats away the exposed steel, leaving that leather grain standing, leaving it proud into the tool. That's what I mean by hand.
Okay.
So what happens is when you have a tool that's 50 inches by 50 inches, and your master plate is only 12 by 12 or 24 by 24, you got to lay in multiple patterns, and then by hand, you got to connect the dots so the customer never sees that.
So you don't see the seam.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, though, I can go to my graphics guy, have him output the same leather grain on a roll of film, which is indefinitely wide and indefinitely long, and I can cover the whole tool without any seams. So it progressed. I mean, the computer has been a huge boon for us. Just like,
sure,
if I didn't tell you we were a texture company, you walked into one of the offices, you'd think it was just a graphic arts department. You know, the guys are working on different patterns, different things like that. So that was one of the big things. One of the big transitions for us in texturing was being able to work with these new materials, these new films that allowed us to print more crisp and precise patterns, and then put them, etch them into the mold. And that took us through quite a while. And now there's even materials there that are flexible. So I can actually, like if you're doing a car, you know, you got your A-pillars in front of you, in front of your windshield. Mm-hmm. You can wrap these films now onto that tool without distorting the texture. Because texture is geometric. A customer put it to me the best way. He goes, trying to put a texture onto geometric patterns like taking a baseball, which I think you can relate there, Nick, and wrapping a piece of paper on the baseball without any wrinkles. That's what our customers are asking us to do.
Wow.
So with this flexible film that is available to us, we can actually stretch it and lay it into the tool with no or minimal distortion, nothing that anybody would see. So that for us was huge. And the automotive industry is kind of what drives texturing. They're always pushing and pushing their vendors to make the car look cooler inside.
Sure.
You know, texture is not there because everybody wants to pay extra to have, you know, plastic parts look like leather. It's there to hide molding flaws, and it's there to make a cheap part look more expensive.
Oh, that's, you know, I mean, we're in foam. So when you have something where some foam may rise to the surface, one of our first questions about it is this a textured mold? Is it, because you know you can hide more stuff in that texture. And
yes.
Now, I mean, one of the other things where I see a lot of texture in, you know, trials we've done is the consumer products, maybe in some bottle caps or, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
cosmetics or shampoo bottles. They always want it to be like a certain look that looks cool, or, you know, I mean, do you get a lot of that?
We get a ton of that. That's the majority of our business.
Okay.
So we get all the programs, well, not all the programs. We get a lot of programs for bottle caps. So like when you look at a Gatorade bottle, it's got a polished G and then it's got a texture in the background. That's a product that you would see that we work on here. And packaging is really nice because you're not actually really paying for what's in the product. You're paying for that package. That's more true on the cosmetic side. Sure. You know, you got these nice glass bottles for your cologne, and you know, mostly the ladies that have these beautiful shampoo bottles. And I mean, what's the difference? You're getting the cheap stuff for the guys, and the ladies are getting the expensive stuff. I think the product is the same. The bottle is different.
Right.
You know, years ago with Avon, we used to do all their hot stamp dyes because all their little compacts and all their little, I don't even know the names, for the mascara and for the eyeliner and whatever, they would have the gold embossing on the compact with the rose for Avon.
Sure.
So they would hot stamp or foil stamp all these products. So a lot of secondary operations, a lot of extra cost, because it was something that you're trying to make yourself beautiful with. Is, the package has to represent this. So personally, from a sales side, I love packaging the most out of everything, because it's also a lot of cavities, and it's also changing all the time.
Right. That's something that changes a lot. I mean,
yes, you build a tool, or you have a tool come in here, let's say for a chainsaw cover or a chainsaw case. It's going to be the same case. They're going to build one tool, two tools. It's going to be a blow mold. How often are they going to change that up?
right.
Packaging, and I like to always brag about this. We did a program for a thermoform company. It was 2,200 cavities came in here. It was 2,200 cavities that came in that needed to be etched and engraved. And because they have, it goes for a well-known fast food chain. And that's great, because you throw that product away. So they got to keep making product. The tools wear out. They keep changing it. So for me, when I'm looking for stuff, I always prefer to have these huge, high-running packages. I don't get it every day, but the packaging industry is great.
Now, do you do more with thermoformers, or is it
No.
equal thermoforming to injection molding, or is thermoforming a big thing for you?
Thermoforming is huge. I'll bet you in our shop here, it's probably about 35 to 40%.
Wow.
And then injection molding is pretty much king. But thermoforming is up there. A lot of the stuff, thermoforming is clear. A lot of the tool makers can machine in their own logos, things like that, especially on the bottom when it's a flat area. On the engraving side of things, we get a lot of the tooling that's engraved on a sidewall or on a curved surface.
Oh, okay. Where it's more intricate.
Where it's more intricate. Tool makers don't want to mess with that. We can bend the artwork, get it in there, make it look optically correct.
Right.
If it's really tight engraving, meaning the characters are really tight. Like on injection molding, it's very critical that you have appropriate draft. You have sharp corners. You don't want it to look like somebody just went in there with a Dremel and put your logo in there.
Like me.
Correct.
Somebody
Correct.
like me.
So if we were going to do ID additive packaging, you want your logo to be nice and crisp.
Right.
You don't want your supplier to say, wow, that's the file you sent me, so that's how I cut it.
Yeah.
No. I call the customer back and I say, hey, listen, guys, your file, it's crap.
Garbage.
It's garbage. Let me fix it for you. And that's, as a vendor, and this, is how you separate the good ones from the bad ones, is the, we're there to educate you. We're there to educate the customer to make them have their best product.
Customer service.
I need you to have repeat business. I need your customers to go, wow, this shop has it going on. We don't care who they use, but this is awesome. And then it translates to more work for us. We need our customers. They need us, hopefully, and we want to build a partnership. So,
let me ask you, you mentioned some packaging and
Mm-hmm.
some automotives and some other consumer goods. What are some avenues that, if I'm not in any of those industries and I'm kind of on the fence about engraving and texturing on one of my molds, what's a common objection that you run into quite a bit, and what might you say to some of those individuals that are, like I said, on the fence about getting their feet wet?
So the biggest objection, and I think this holds true for a lot of industries, is price. So, they'll ask you to quote stuff. Pete, we're not really familiar with this, but, one of our customers is pushing us to get this done. Can you quote adding this and this and this? Okay, this is the price. That's expensive. And it's difficult then to justify a cost to someone who has no clue. So we go through the process and we explain, and, most people get it. There's always the guys that linger and just want to argue with you about it all day long. But usually, Brian, most of the people that come to us that seek out a company like ours, something is driving that cosmetic finish to their product, whether it's their marketing department, whether it's their customer's marketing department. Most of the people that we do talk to, there's a few that call us up and say, hey, look, guys, I have no experience in this. We're trying to mimic something that's out in the market. We're trying to do this. We're trying to do that. We'll walk through the whole process because it benefits me for you to know exactly what needs to be done, because when a tool does show up and there's a tight timeline, we can move forward. So what we like to do is, for starters, I have this checklist I'll send out to you. And say on this checklist, it'll say everything from how many components and what kind of steel and what kind of material are you running? Is there a hot runner system? I mean, all of this. And it helps us get all the information from you. And then it helps you when you're looking at it going, oh, they really need, okay, I didn't think about that. They really need to know that there's 4 lifters in this thing and it's going to get textured and things like that. So when a guy comes to us and he doesn't know 100% or she doesn't know 100%, we'll walk him through the process, you know, and, you know, you get the prices out there and they go back to their team, and if it's a cost that the product can sustain, they go for it. If it's something that they can't, they won't, you know. So we try to get all the information out there: costs, processes, how tools should come to us, everything. So you don't see that a lot anymore, but there are still people out there that their product just never got textured. And now if it's a custom molder, now their customer, it's a new customer and they're asking for texture, and they give us a call. And
It's the marketing guys.
it is. Texturing is all marketing.
Yes. And those guys have a ton of say. I mean, and that's why you'll find sometimes, like, you'll give a cost on something and maybe you get some pushback, but then the guys in marketing are like, we need that. You have to have it. Like, that's how we're going to sell this. And it gets things done. So
earlier you asked me, you know, like what trends are in the texturing world. So in engraving and texturing, it's kind of, and because this is how it's going to tie into marketing. So laser is the latest buzzword in my trade. So years ago, laser, exactly.
Okay.
Laser. So in engraving, you know, you could always go and buy a desktop laser engraver and you could do a bunch of stuff. We always fought against it because laser engravers were always sold as, you could replace everything on the market today by buying this laser. Well, no, you can't. Not for the tooling. Part marking, etc. Yeah, okay. I can't part mark here cost effectively enough to even sell it. So we never got into laser engraving because we could do our engraving here in-house better than anybody else. Then the lasers came out for the texturing about 12 years ago. And because we have partners in Europe, we knew one of our partners bought it in Europe, and we were kind of, you know, the cost to get in there was almost $1 million, and it was very limited. And we're like, what, are you crazy to spend all this money on this machine that can only let you do this much work? And they came down and they said, listen, guys, our automotive customers are what's pushing this laser. Their marketing people, the guys, the big three, the guys, the German automotive, or the worldwide automotive, they wanted to see parts in their cars with this unique texture that could only be achieved by a 5-axis laser, because they wanted to differentiate themselves. All of a sudden you got a, I don't know, $75,000 car. You wanted something very unique and very futuristic in that car. So GF came to us a few years ago, and they were pushing us to buy the laser. And we never pulled the trigger because they kept focusing on the fact that, oh, you could engrave products. You can engrave your tools with this. And we're like, guys, we've been engraving forever. You know, so we've been engraving forever. We don't need a 5-axis laser to get better. Then the opportunity arose. We got the 5-axis laser in here for the texturing. And let me tell you, that thing is neat. It allows us to do things. And I was just telling a customer this morning that we fought it. We fought it tooth and nail. And then we got it in here. And it was great. I mean, the abilities that it has, the things that it can do that we can't do in our traditional ways is night and day. You know, we can take your cavity design, we can take a unique texture design, we can marry the two on a screen, and then we can let the machine run overnight. In the morning, you come back and you got this cavity that's fully textured, no seam lines, no masking, no getting rid of the acid. It's just perfect.
Wow.
It's beautiful. Now we're talking about getting a few more machines in here because scheduling is very difficult on the machine because we never have time to get new projects on the machine because it's always so busy. And, you know, the lasers, the one we got started at $500,000. So it wasn't easy to say, let me just jump into this and try this. You know, finally we sat down and we said, we're going to have to. If we're going to be the guys we've been the last 98 years and we're always pushing the envelope on what can be done, if we don't get into this, who are we then? You know, I'm only 43. I got some time left in this industry. And, you know, it's very neat. It's very neat.
Believe it or not, I'm a little older than 43.
Okay. All right. Well,
I don't know if you believe it or not.
No, never.
But when you looked at this laser, did you go to their facility and do a bunch of testing on it? And like,
no, we're very fortunate that we joined a group 20 years ago. It's called the Surface Etching Cooperation, where it's all independently owned texture houses globally. So every year we meet. Last year I was in Brazil. The year before that we were in Germany, Japan. We go all over the world. We're actually supposed to be in Turkey right now, but coronavirus took care of that one for us.
Yeah.
My partner in Germany, he got onto the laser bandwagon right away. You know, one of his big customers is Mercedes-Benz. Mercedes-Benz is very fussy about their interiors. They said, you need a laser. So he got a laser in there. So we were fortunate that I could go to my partners, see what they're doing, and learn all the ins and outs before we went and cut a check to buy the machine. So we didn't have that learning curve that some of the other guys do.
I mean, you didn't have that stress of, you know, laying out $500,000 to like, maybe this is going to work. Yeah, you had a general idea. Yeah, it was a good gamble. Yeah, I mean,
yes. I did have the stress, Nick, because my dad's looking at me going,
yes.
You spring this on me in the middle of my retirement that we're spending $500,000 on a machine.
Sure.
You have work lined up. I said, no, I don't have work lined up. He goes, why not? I said, because we don't have the machine yet.
Sure.
So it was, we were sweating bullets for a while, you know, but I like to be on LinkedIn. I like to be on Twitter. I like to get my face in front of everybody. And slowly.
We're going to have to save that for another conversation. Okay. Like sales efforts, LinkedIn, social media. I'd love to talk to you about that on one of these. But one of the things that, you know, I'm subbing in. This is the B team. I'm subbing in for Carolyn. But one of the things she wanted me to ask about was, you know, in regards to cleaning of surfaces and maintenance of some of the things that you do. What do you tell customers, and you know, what do they work on?
So one of the biggest questions we get is, Pete, how do we take care of a textured surface? You know, in production. We just spent all this money. We got this tool textured. What do we need to do? The first thing we tell customers is, look, a part gets stuck in there. Do not use a pry bar to get it out. You're going to destroy everything. Secondly is, you know, we always advise them, clean out your tools. You know, don't leave all that resin in there. Don't leave the materials in there. If water settles in there, obviously we know what's going to happen. So we tell them to wipe out the tools, whether it's just a rag with some acetone or just some mold shield in there to protect the surface. So we tell them nothing abrasive, nothing that can cause any surface damage. Now, you know, what happens after the surface damage is there? I mean, once it's there, it's there. So we have two types of surface damage. You know, the one is physical, where somebody used a pry bar to get a part out. Well, you're in trouble. The other stuff that you guys and I have talked about a little bit is like corrosion. Water gets in there, they close the mold, nobody noticed it, they put it on the shelf, they get it back, the customer has to run some more parts, they open it up, it's rusty, it's pitted. You know, what do we do then? essentially we get the tools back here, and if we prep the parting lines and we do a light glass bead, a light, vapor blast on the surface, which enables us to survey any damage. You know, because the tools come in, they're stained, they're burnt up from the running of the plastics. So we need to get a good visual of what's underneath all that. Sometimes that's all you need. It's cleaned, it's nothing, there's no pitting, there's nothing. Sometimes it's stained, and maybe there's polish all over this tool and we can't sandblast it. That's where we've been using your stuff, where we'll kind of go in there and we'll rub it out with your material, with your liquids, and then we can see how much damage is in there and then not trash any polish or anything. So, you know, and sometimes things need to be welded, some things need to be hand peened back, and sometimes we got to strip all the texture out and start over.
Okay.
So it could be a 10-minute job.
When you're stripping out all the texture, you got to, you need to go and start from scratch, right? I mean, because if you're taking that out, you can't put stuff back in to retexture, right?
No, if we take it out, that means we're going in there, we're benching it, so we're polishing it all out, and we're redoing it like it's a brand new job.
Wow.
So sometimes the customer's got to compensate on the coarse side, or they got to drop a cavity, they got to do whatever, but that's what needs to be done. So hopefully, and with using your product, I know that, you know, running it through the system, it'll alleviate some of that gamble, but it's inevitable. An injector pin breaks, it goes bouncing around that cavity. We've seen tools that have just been textured. They leave here, they go to the customer, and somebody drops something in it. They haven't even run it yet. They haven't even assembled the tool yet. And they drop a hammer in there. They drop something in there. Oof. Then they turn around, bring it back. And that's always difficult because you feel bad. And now you had a brand new tool that maybe you have to weld. You know, you got to blend all that out and start all over, and the customer's already behind. And so we've seen it all. We've seen it all.
Wow. Wow.
What's an average, I guess, lifespan of a texture tool? If one of your customers takes all the precautions, doesn't drop a hammer, you know, doesn't have staining and stuff like that. And I know it probably varies based on tool size, but, you know, what if I have like a 4 million part production run, you know?
Depends on the material they're running.
Right.
Is it coated? Glass-filled nylon, it's not going to last. Glass-filled nylon is just like going in there and polishing out the tool with every part. So there's really no right or wrong answer. I don't think anybody can answer that one. We get the question all the time. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not smart enough for that one. So I don't know what to tell you. I mean, we do advise customers that, hey, if you're going to be running a lot of volume, you know, maybe look into plating. And then there's another supplier that'll do that. And otherwise, I don't know. I mean,
I get asked the same question as well with some of my materials, and I don't have an answer. It varies. There's too many variables, so I get
exactly.
It. Just figured I'd still throw
I appreciate that. You know, I did an SP thermoforming conference the one year, and I was on a tooling panel, and nobody asked me any questions for the whole hour. So somebody says, all right, Pete, I got to ask you a question. You haven't been asked anything. What's the average cost of texturing on a tool? I was like, huh? How do I answer that one?
Right.
We did it more as a joke, but I was like, really? We're going to go out on this one? You know, so there's no right answer on how long it'll last. So
when you're looking at the different things, and if somebody maintains their stuff, I mean, as far as tools go, do you prefer, I know they've gotten better with some of the aluminum molds that are out there. Mm-hmm. Is it all steel, or is it aluminum, or, you know,
it's either aluminum
with all of it, I assume?
We work with all of it, you know, so it's either aluminum or steel. There's stainless steel tools. So, I mean, that falls in the steel family. Blow molds, vacuum molds are predominantly aluminum. Most injection molds are some sort of tool steel. So we'll get blow molds and thermoform molds, sometimes they have dissimilar metal inserts. You know, like a lot of blow molds will have beryllium copper pinch-offs on there, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But usually everything is always just one or the other. One or the other. And, you know, and that's a whole separate issue when you have the dissimilar metals because they're etching at different rates. And it's one of the things you got to talk to the customer about so they're not blindsided that, hey, it looks slightly different. Well,
Yeah.
two materials, you know, and stainless steel is designed not to rust. The etching process is essentially rusting the material, you know, eroding the steel the same way rust would act with it. So we can etch 400 series stainless. You can't etch any 300 series in the traditional method. We do etch 300 series for the semiconductor industry, but it's a very caustic and very volatile process. So we have an enclosed etching machine that we do it in. It's high heat and high pressure. So an acid, when it's working, it stinks. So you have to have the proper equipment to ventilate. So
Awesome.
very interesting.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, how do people get a hold of Wisconsin Engraving and you? I mean, got to get your information out there. Here's your spot.
So Wisconsin Engraving, we're located right outside of Milwaukee. We're 20 minutes west of Milwaukee. So you guys can either get a hold of me at, you know, wi-engraving.com, which is our website. You can find me on LinkedIn under Pete Kambouris. You can find me on Twitter under WI Engraving. You can find me on Instagram, WI Engraving. We do have a Facebook page. I don't keep it up to date too much. I don't think a lot of people in our industry are Facebookers.
Yeah.
But you know, you call the shop here. If you Google Wisconsin Engraving, we come up on everything. So yeah, we're pretty easy to get a hold of.
And you guys are doing more and more with, I mean, obviously with all that's going on, we're getting better and better at remote support. You guys do that as well. I'm assuming like kind of a Zoom meeting or FaceTime, WhatsApp, Skype.
Yep. Yeah, we're all over the board because our customers are all over the world. So we have to.
So you've been doing that.
Even before.
Right.
You know? So, and now, and I think you guys are signed up for the Amerimold Connects.
Yes. Yes.
So we're going into a new adventure, virtual trade shows.
I told our group, and I'll tell you the same. When we were talking about the possibility of a virtual show, I kind of felt that the Amerimold Connects would be the best one to start with, because I feel like Gardner Group and Christina Fugis, Mold Making Technology, they have a very good social media platform, and they're very good about that. So I thought, if there's anywhere we're going to start, let's start with them and kind of figure things out. But at least we know they're going to push this strong. Whereas I'm just not sure about some of the other shows that we're involved in, that they're going to be able to do the same. So I think this is going to give us our best chance at success with a virtual show.
Well, like I told Christina, and we had a Zoom meeting the other day, and our representative, I said, look, if you guys are willing to do this, I'm willing to try it. What do you have to lose, I guess? I mean, some money, but it's worth a shot.
Right. And I think they give you the best chance. That's what I think. Because I think Gardner, through plastics technology, mold making technology, I think they're going to get your message out there as strong as they can. Whereas I think some of the smaller trade shows that I've done or that we're looking at doing, when they say we're just going to go virtual, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know that that's like, I don't know I'm going to get the return that I'm looking for. Yeah, because I got a good feeling about this.
You're still paying the same amount of money you would at a physical show.
Yes.
So it better be bang for the buck. You know?
It'll be interesting to see the leads I get and, you know, what kind of response we get going forward.
This group will give us the best bang for the buck, I feel. You know, they do very well, like you said, on the social media and their digital platform. So, you know, I think we stand a good chance. And who knows, this might be the future, Nick.
I I think I was telling Brian and everybody, I'm like, look, you got to get good at remote support because I don't know when somebody's going to say, hey, come on into our facility. I just don't know that that's going to be certainly in the next 3 months. I don't see that at all. And it may be for the balance of 2020 or until they come up with a vaccine. So I'm just not sure. And I told my guys, I said, no, when you do a Zoom meeting, follow up. What did you like? What didn't you like? What can we improve on? Where did we miss? So that we get better and better at it. And I do think that in the long run, I think this may help us be a better company to technically support our customers as fast as possible. I mean, if they said, hey, we're going to wait for you to fly out next week, why don't we try this? We may be able to fix this problem in the next hour. So
Nick, it's not only the speed of service, it's the financial savings you have as a vendor.
yes,
Because you have that one customer that always tells you to fly across country. You go in there and you spend all this money and you look and go, this is a 5-minute fix.
yep. I brought
We've all
that
been
up
down there.
too. Yes.
We've all been down there.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, you're always happy to help. You always want to help. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But there are ways to go about it where you can just get stuff done. And I think this is going to kind of force us because we've had the same thing. We've always been able to help with Skype, FaceTime, but now we're going to get better at it to where we talk with a customer and say, hey, look, I can come out and see you next week and it's going to cost this, or let's just give this a try. Odds are we're going to get it fixed. And that's what we've been doing. So, I look at these things as something that's going to help us. We're adding more and more content to our YouTube channel. Brian's doing more and more stuff, getting involved in groups with I think we're going to do something with Amerimold Connects with Tool Room Live, or what, I'm not sure what they're going to call it, but something along that line. And we'll just continue adding content. And I think this could be a real interesting time for all of us. And you take it that way. I know I'm not making light of anything. This is tough, and it's going to take time. Going to have to get testing and all that other stuff. But in the meantime, we're in a great industry. Plastics, it's going to be there when we're done, and it's going to be there as we work our way through it. So, with that all being said, Pete, thanks for coming on. Thanks for talking with us. Brian, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And again, subbing in for the A team, this is Nick Sotos, subbing in for Carolyn. What I can say for sure is follow us on our YouTube channel, and please subscribe. So again, guys, thank you very much and have a great day.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you very much.
See you guys.
Thanks, Brian.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.